Ever since I was a teenager, I've always had this really weird infatuation with serial killers. I wanted to know what would make me different from a serial killer. Everybody has those dark thoughts in their heads about harming somebody else. Nobody really acts on them. Well, the average person doesn't really act on them. We're not actually going to be talking about that theory today. Instead, we're going to talk about some facts that the average person may not know about serial killers. Now I do want to let you know that throughout the video I am going to be showing pictures of serial killers, so if you are uncomfortable with that kind of thing, you can just wait until the end and there'll be a palate cleanser of sorts. It'll be all better after that. But probably not, because it's Halloween, so we're supposed to scare each other. We're going to start with the most well-known serial killer, and that serial killer is Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted of murdering 17 people, and it's believed that he ate a lot of those people that he killed. Now, when he was in high school, he actually had a knack for pulling off some really weird pranks. So much so that his classmates would call it doing a Dahmer. Now we're going to move on to who I believe is the scariest serial killer of all time, and that's Ted Bundy. Now, Ted Bundy has multiple facts that I'm sure you probably don't know, and the first of which is that he actually used to work for a suicide prevention hotline where he would try to stop people from committing suicide. It was there where he met Anne Rule, who would go on to write a book called The Stranger Beside Me, which chronicled all of Ted Bundy's murders. He also saved someone from drowning and received a special commendation from the Seattle Police Department for stopping a purse thief. As history tells us, Ted Bundy was convicted of murdering 35 people. John Wayne Gacy actually shook hands with the former First Lady, Rosalynn Carter, and here's the picture. He was also a local precinct captain in the local Democratic Party. If you didn't know, John Wayne Gacy actually murdered 33 teenagers and young men and buried the majority of them in his crawl space in the apartment that he lived in. You might know John Wayne Gacy as the killer clown who would dress up as a clown and go to children's birthday parties and make them laugh and kill them. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK killer, actually worked for the ADT security services where he would install home security systems. As shocking as that is, it's probably the perfect job for a serial killer who was convicted of murdering 10 people. Rodney Alcala, who was convicted of murdering 8 people, actually won the dating game. Oh, yeah. Here's a snippet of the clip.
Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Rod, welcome. We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl. Okay.
Bachelor number 1.
Yes?
What's your best time?
The best time is at night. Nighttime.
Why do you say that?
Because that's the only time there is.
The only time? What's wrong with morning, afternoon?
Well, they're okay, but nighttime's when it really gets good. Then you're really ready. Come on, over here. Peel me.
So I'll take 1.
Number 1. Bachelor number 1. All right.
The Bachelorette, Cheryl Bradshaw, actually didn't go on the date with him because she thought that he was creepy. Probably saved her life. Robert Lee Yates worked as a prison guard in Walla Walla, Washington. Apart from murdering 13 prostitutes, Yates also had several achievements, including multiple medals from the United States Army. He was sentenced to 408 years in prison and 2 death sentences. Kenneth Bianchi, who was one half of the Hillside Stranglers, actually applied at the Los Angeles Police Department and went on a couple of ride-alongs with the police officers. And the main topic of conversation in the squad cars was Bianchi's work. He was convicted of strangling 12 females and was sentenced to life in prison. Richard Chase, known as the Vampire of Sacramento, was a schizophrenic hypochondriac, believed that you could absorb vitamin C to your brain by placing oranges on your head. He believed that his heart would often stop beating, which he tried to counteract with vampirism. He would do this by injecting rabbit blood inside of him, which obviously didn't work, so he moved on to humans. He was convicted of murdering 6 victims, having sex with their dead bodies, drinking their blood, and taking their organs home with him to eat later. He was obviously sentenced to death, but committed suicide in prison. I'm not sure how a vampire can commit suicide. Maybe he sparkled himself to death. Herman Webster Mudgett, better known as H. H. Holmes, was actually married to 3 separate women. He cheated the women and the system by using different names each time he got married. Holmes is notable for his murder castle, where he claims to have killed 27 different people. Luis Garavito has the most number of victims attributed to one person. Known as La Bestia, he was a child murderer, torture killer, and rapist. He has 138 proven victims and was sentenced to, you guessed it, nope, not life in prison, 22 years. 22 years. That's younger than me. Yep. 22 years for 138 murders. Pedro Lopez was released from a mental institution on a $50 bail. After possibly killing 110 people, Lopez was able to walk free in the amount that he spent on groceries a week, though he was later caught by Interpol with a warrant. Known as the Monster of the Andes, Lopez was also a child murderer and rapist. He was convicted of 3 murders, but the actual is around 110 murders. He was released from prison in 1998, and no one has a clue where he is today. Due to a rushed investigation and a hasty confession, an innocent man with a proven alibi was executed for Andrei Chikatilo's murders. Known as the Butcher of Rostov, Andrei Chikatilo murdered 53 people in 12 years. Alexander Kravchenko was wrongly convicted and put to death for the murder of Andrei Chikatilo's first victim. It wasn't until 12 years later and 52 more murders by Andrei Chikatilo that he was actually convicted and put to death. Moses Saitol has the 10th longest prison sentence without life imprisonment. Known as South Africa's Ted Bundy, Saitol actually murdered 38 people. His mannerisms and form of attack were very similar to Ted Bundy's. Saitol was actually convicted and placed in prison for 2,410 years and not eligible for parole for 930 years. Mayuki Ishikawa has probably the shortest prison sentence for murdering over 100 people. Ishikawa was a maternity nurse who murdered 103 newborn children because she felt that the parents wouldn't take care of them during the abortion prohibition in Japan. For some people, this might set up a moral dilemma. Is she right for doing it? Is she wrong for killing kids who wouldn't have had a life anyway, possibly? It's all speculation, but it really sets up that moral dilemma that could be there. She was arrested in 1948 and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Stephen Massoff was probably the most chilling murderer of all time. Massoff, who worked at an abortion clinic, testified that he clipped the spines of more than 100 newborn babies once they started showing signs of life. Jane Topin served no time for killing 30 people. Jane Topin was a nurse who poisoned 31 patients for her own sexual gratification. As they were dying, she would climb in bed with them and hold them until they were dead. She was found not guilty because she's clearly f***ing insane. She died in a mental hospital in 1938. Christine Malevre is a serial killer who is walking free today. Malevre, who was also a nurse, killed terminally ill patients after she claims that they told her to kill them. The families of the victims do deny this, but it's one of those things that we'll never know the true answer to. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison in 1998. Can you guess how many years it's been since 1998? One of Mexico's most notorious serial killers was actually a professional wrestling champion. Juana Barraza was an independent wrestler who lived in Mexico. In the ring, she would use the name La Dama del Silencio. Outside of the ring, Barraza would pretend to be a social worker and enter elderly's homes. Once inside, she would murder them and steal their property. Police called her La Mata Viejitas, which loosely translates to kill old ladies. She was convicted of murdering one person, but is connected to at least 10 other murders. And those have been some facts that you probably don't know about some pretty notorious serial killers. While doing the research for this, it was extremely hard because looking up serial killer pictures never gets easier. The worst for me to do was Ted Bundy because his eyes look so lifeless, as if he lacks a soul. It's pretty... Until next time, this has been Cultist Culture.
Thanks for watching another episode of Coldest Culture. If you liked the video, click on the left for the most recent upload, and click on the right for a similar video. Don't forget to like the video before leaving to watch a more popular YouTuber. To support the channel, all you have to do is click on that little circular channel icon. The one right there in the center. I know you see it. Put that finger muscle to good use and click on subscribe.